I had started to astral project, and at the age of like 12, that's when I started seeing the silver cord. That's when these entities, these demonic attacks, these night tortures, night terrors, they started becoming more fierce, more frequent, and more brutal. I had gotten pulled into a portal by an entity. Not many females get initiated into these secret fraternities. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm from New Mexico. I was born and raised on a reservation. I'm Native American. I was raised in a poverty-stricken area. I didn't have a really good childhood. My childhood was filled with a lot of alcoholism, a lot of drug use, a lot of violence attempts, some successful, some not. Adultery was a lot of it. I was taught to drink from at a really young age, although it wasn't with alcohol. It was definitely with soda, like in a shot glass, and learned to do that. Play quarters with my uncles and older cousins and stuff. I believe I was at the age of 5 or 6 because I was not old enough to sit on the chair, but I had to sit like in my uncle's lap in order to like roll the quarter off my nose and make a shot. And I will make a shot in the shot glass with a quarter, and I would take a drink of soda. So that was on my mother's side of the family, where there was a lot of parties. When my mother and my father divorced at the age of 8, I had to move to my father's side of the family, and that house was very strict. My grandfather had tons of land for his cows and sheep, so we had a ranch and a farm. I was a sheep herder. I learned to ride horses, round up cattle. We also had dirt bikes and four-wheelers and stuff, so I learned how to be a mechanic at a really young age. My father was the one who was the jack of all trades. So he was a kickboxer, he was a mechanic, two-wheeler driver. So he's the one that kind of took me under his wing as the oldest child. I have 3 other younger brothers, but I was the oldest one. And he taught me how to become a mechanic and change out transmissions and stuff. And started out as a flashlight holder. If any of you grew up like in the 90s and holding a flashlight for your dad while he's trying to fix on the engine and stuff, and you pretty much knew that you were getting yelled at for not holding a flashlight correctly. Eventually, I learned how to change out engines, transmission blocks, and stuff like that. So later on in life, I was an aircraft mechanic in the Navy. On the reservation, we understand the spiritual side of the world. It's not like a hidden secret, but we're taught this spiritual side of the world as young as we can start walking and talking, because we're involved in ceremonies that open our, I believe it's called in a new age, our third eye. There are certain ceremonies that take place in these tribes. A lot of it is closed off to the public. So the only people that are able to participate and witness these certain ceremonies are only people that are enrolled in that certain tribe. Powwows and the little dancers that dance like at visitor centers and stuff like that, that's open to the public, those are completely different from the ones that I'm talking about. The ones that I'm talking about are the ones that where these dancers, they embody these polytheist gods, these little gods, because it is a polytheist religion. There's not just one god. There's so many gods. It's kind of similar to Hindu, like how there's different gods in that religion and they all stand for certain meanings, like the god of fertility or the god of war and stuff like that. Was the same thing with Native American. These little gods, they're called kachinas, and there's several tribes in New Mexico that actually embody these kachinas. And what they're doing is they act as that god. They represent that little god. And it can be like during a summer solstice dance, or it can be during a winter solstice dance. So there's like different types of kachinas that come out throughout the year. But it's all year round. It's not just like during summer solstice or winter solstice. It's like you have the fall dances, and then you have the spring dances, and then you have everything in between. So there's constantly something going on in the tribe and stuff. So at a really young age, as young as I can remember, I know it was before the age of 8 because the age of 8 for me, it sticks out because that's when my parents, they divorced, and that's when I had to move to my father's house. But even before then, my brother and I, my younger brother, we could see paranormal stuff. We could see apparitions. There's always something. These these ghosts, or I would say ghosts, but they're entities and stuff. The way that they like to scare people in a village is they like to jump on the roofs of our houses and stuff. And my mom, she always has stories of things jumping on her roof, or they'll throw like big old rocks on the roof and scare the kids. So we're always told not to go outside at night, when the sun sets, because that's when all these entities come out and they start terrorizing people. My brother and I, we would always see this because we were on a ranch, and our ranch was, well, I shouldn't say was, it is still to this day like 40 minutes away from the reservation. So it was quite a drive. So we will always have a camp set up there during the summertime. There was only one time where we saw a thing. I can't explain what it was, but I know what it looked like. It looked like it was completely white, and it looked like an Indian from way back in the day, because it only had like a loincloth, but it was sitting on the top of the corral, and it was staring at the campsite, but it manifested in the physical form, so everybody saw it. And its hair was like up in like it looked like a little pineapple, an absurd pineapple, and there was like a red line across its face. And when my brother and I saw it, we started screaming. And my dad and some of my uncles that saw it, they grabbed a shotgun and they started shooting at it. One of them hit the chest and it fell backwards, and it jumped up and it like kind of ran off, and it grabbed the sheep and ran into the field with it. The next day when we woke up, there was a little bit of blood where that thing was sitting, and then there was like bits and pieces of wool of the sheep that it took with it. And so that was the first time that I've ever seen anything like that happen. So things like that happen. Like I said, we talk about it, and we'll have the medicine man come out, and they'll come and say prayers, and they'll like cleanse it and stuff like that, and we'll eventually say that it's good to go back because all the evil spirits are warded off and stuff. So the second time I've seen something like that was at my mom's house, and that was on a different tribe, because by that time she had remarried and into a different tribe and moved away from our motherland, I should say. And this tribe, I saw a lot more things. I saw uh, apparitions of old men walking backwards. I saw black shadows. And by this time, my brother and I, he always had sleepwalking issues. So he would go outside and walk in the middle of the night. And my mom had to lock the doors and stuff like that, so he wouldn't walk out in the street. But he was always waking up and screaming, saying that he sees Freddy Krueger. So his little night terror demon was the Hat Man. Mine was the Shadow Man. And both of us were, at that time, we had learned that we were astral projecting. I don't know my brother's story, but like I said, he only talks about it a little bit. He doesn't really get too detailed into it. But with me, with my experience, I had started to astral project, and at the age of like 12, I believe. Well, at the age of 12, that's when I started seeing the silver cord, only a couple times, but even before then, when I was younger, when I was astral projecting, I didn't see a silver cord at that time. The astral projection with the silver cord, when it did happen, it came out of my belly button, and it was a really thick, I swear this silver cord had to have been like about 10 inches around, and it was a translucent, or transparent, you can see through it, but the further away I flew from my physical body, the thinner it got. So when I was able to go down out of the house and into the canyons and stuff, the thinner it got. But then there was like a fear that was inside, because I was like, if I go any further and it snaps, I might die. So I would go back to my body, and it wasn't like I was out all night on my body. It was only like a few seconds, and I would come back into my body, and then it would happen again. like months down the road. And I would see another silver cord, but I would be going in a different direction. And when I was living with my mom at the time, that's when these entities, these demonic attacks, these night tortures, night terrors, they started becoming more fierce, more frequent, and more brutal. Because at first it was like fun. It was like, oh look, I can go out and out of my body and I can go to this other place. They made it look fun. They made it seem fun because I was like, it was like a freedom feeling, you know. But the more that it was happening to me, and like I said, I had no idea how to do it. It wasn't like I was concentrating, but it would just happen, while I was sleeping. And then it started becoming demonic, and when it started becoming demonic was when, I was living at my father's house at the time, and that's when all the abuse started happening. From the age of 8 to 16, that's when I started getting at the age of 8, I was raped by my older cousin, and my other uncles and cousins, they were sexually assaulting me. My aunts were verbally abusing me. My dad would be gone because he was a truck driver, and when he would come home on the weekends, nobody would mess with me because my dad was a pretty mean person anyway. And he was super sweet with me when he was sober, but when he was drinking, it was a very mean drunk. And everybody was terrified of him because he didn't care who he fought while he was drunk. So when my dad would come home, it was just him and I. We would go out to the ranch and we would work. And afterwards, he would stop by the bar. And I would have that sinking feeling like I it was like walking on eggshells around my dad when he started drinking because it was like I had just gave him like a little look and he didn't like it. Then it was like you knew that it was going to be really bad because not only was I being abused like with these other abuses with other family members, but then now I had to worry about him and his emotional state and trying to avoid his physical abuse because he wouldn't hesitate to backhand me and it was always like a lesson, like, I'm going to teach you how to fight. I'm going to teach you how to fight, and it was really hands on. Like me and my brother, we would get our butts kicked, like to the point where we would have busted lips or bruises and stuff. But that was him saying that was his tough love. So growing up then, that's when and then he would leave on a Sunday and he would go back on the road. So it was kind of like a relief when he left, but then it was like the wolves came out and that's when all the other aunties and cousins and uncles started the abuse all over again. So school was definitely my safe space. I love school. Always wanted to go to school and just stay there after school programs, but I couldn't because my aunt, who was actually in charge of my well-being at the time, said that I wasn't allowed to stay after school because I had to come home and I had to do chores. So it was either school or the ranch. And the ranch was also like another good getaway, even though it was like a lot of hard work because being a rancher and a farmer, the work starts when the sun comes up and it doesn't finish until the sun goes down. I go to school. Well, actually, we would wake up when the sun comes up. We would feed all the animals that were not at the ranch. So usually we brought home sick animals and stuff like that. So we would have to feed them before the bus came, get all the eggs out of the hen house, feed the pigs and stuff, and then get on the bus and then go to school, come home, chores. And then I had to learn how to cook at a really young age and feed a family of 13. I had to learn how to make bread and do all that stuff and then do dishes afterwards. So by the time I got done with my homework, it was usually like about 11 or midnight. And then I had to wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning and do it all over again. And then the weekend came and then we had to go to the ranch. It was it was a lot of work. But that's what made my life easier afterwards, when I joined the Navy, because it was like so smooth, so easy, and I didn't have to really worry about anything. Let's see. So here I am. My grandmother tried to protect me as much as she could, but I wanted to tell her so much, so bad, like what all the abuse that I was experiencing at the time with all these other family members. But she had already gone through heart attacks, and I just didn't want to say anything because I blamed myself a lot because I was like, if I say something, I'm going to split up the family. So I didn't say anything until her third heart attack when she died in front of me. And then that's when I finally told one of my aunts that doesn't live at that house. I told her what happened, what has been happening for the past 8 years, and it split the whole entire family apart. And that's when I kind of got removed from the home and I was sent to my aunt's house. I went to three different aunts' house and I was just bouncing around from house to house. And finally, I got sent to my mom's house and sent to a second high school. That didn't really work out because my mom at the time, she still was drinking and she was still partying. So I went from super strict to like, you can do whatever you want. But my second high school, I started thriving. I started concentrating more on school. I made the honor roll. I was in an NHS, National Honor Society, and stuff like that. And it was working out so good. By the time I was a senior, that's when my mom said, you're going to have to move again and go to a third high school because her relationship wasn't working out. So I tried so hard to stay because all I needed was one more semester to graduate, and I was already getting scouted out for a scholarship. So when I moved to the third high school, I transferred. I only had 3 classes and they were like so easy, but I ditched all of them because I was so upset because 2 weeks later, my mom went back to her boyfriend and left me and didn't tell me about it. And that's when I got really upset because I was just so sick and tired of being left. So I ditched and I barely graduated. And I had run into a group of people that were in the game. And that's when I started. I just went crazy at that time. I started game banging. I started selling drugs. I was couch surfing, so I really wasn't home. I was pretty much on the streets and stuff like that, which is so wild because I was I was only 17 at that time. I was 17. I was partying with all these people and all these adults and stuff like that, but I didn't care. At that point, I didn't care. I was dealing with a lot of sleep paralysis at the time too, so that's the only way that I could kind of numb everything was just to drink until I blacked out. So at this time, I had been in and out of jail a few times for petty theft. And finally, after the third arrest, it was a DWI. And I laughed because it was like literally 3 days after I turned 18 years old. And I was supposed to get beat into this game because I had been running with them. I had been selling drugs for them. So they were like, yeah, you want to get beaten or you want to get sexed in? And I was like, well, they showed me what getting sexed in was. And I was like, I don't want that because there was a couple girls that did get sexed in and they had gone so drunk and these guys drugged them. So they passed out in the bathroom and there was like a line of guys standing outside running a train on them. And they said that's what getting sexed in is all about. They said, but if you get beaten, you're not going to have to do any of that. So I was like, okay, I'll get beaten. So we had it all planned out because it was going to be like me getting beaten by these other girls. And then, but that weekend that was supposed to happen, that's when I got caught for drinking and driving and by the state police at that. So I had to go to jail. And looking back on it now, that I thank God for that and for him intervening that time because if I would have gone through with it, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be here today. Because honestly, the whole time that I have been running the streets and stuff like that, I never thought that I would make it to the age of 30, let alone 40, let alone almost 50 years old. So I sat in jail at 18 years old, the youngest one in there. And there was like all these old ladies that are like 40 years old. And every single day I was like, I wake up, I get chewed out, I grab my breakfast and they're more lectures. They're like, is this how you wanted your life to get started? So I didn't have any money to pay off my fines. So what I did was actually talk to the judge and I said, I don't have any money. How can I pay off the fines? And he said, well, you can sit in jail or you can do community service. So I sat in jail and paid it off that way. And by that time, my dad had found out where I was, that I was sitting in jail. And all this time that I was sitting in jail, none of my so-called friends, these little gangbangers that I was hanging out with, none of them came and visited me. None of them tried to bail me out of jail. So my loyalty, I felt so stupid because I was like, I put all this loyalty into these guys and I get nothing in return. But yet the person that I didn't like and I didn't want to be around at that time and who was my father was the only one that bailed me out of jail and told me you need to go to you need to go to the Navy or go do something with your life because this isn't it. So he made me join the Navy, and the recruiter talked to the judge, and I had to get a waiver and join the Navy. Now, the reason for my sleep paralysis, which I didn't know until recently, was because of all these native religion that I had grown up with. Because, like I said, we grew up seeing the spiritual side of the world, the realm, I should say, all the time. When I joined the Navy, I tried to talk to people about it and things that I would see, and there was there is a huge disconnect, especially with a lot of my friends who are Christian and stuff like that, because they would say, yeah, yeah, you can come to church with us and you can, Jesus is going to accept you and stuff. I like their values. I like their morals and stuff like that. And just like listening to them talk about how they were raised, it sounded like a Hallmark movie for real. Cause it was like, wow, you guys say I love you. Oh my gosh. Like their life sounded literally like a movie. Because the first time I've ever heard any of my family members say, I love you, I was 22 years old. And I had been replacing guys, daddy issues and stuff like that, and not looking for love in all the wrong places. And I just latched on to people that showed me a little bit of attention and affection. And that got me in a lot of trouble a lot of the times. But like I said, I didn't know God. I didn't know Jesus. I never grew up in a church. I never read the Bible. I never knew what books were in the Bible, and none of my family members are Christians. I'm the very first Christian. Everybody that's been buried, it has been buried in our native tradition where there's no eulogy, I should say. There's no priests that are saying their last rites. There was for my grandfather, but that's because he went to the boarding school and was forced to convert to Catholicism. But that's only one out of all my aunts and uncles and cousins that have passed away. So to be a Christian in my entire bloodline, the first Christian that accepts Jesus as my Lord and Savior, it's very lonely, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I really wouldn't, because he saved me from everything that's happened to me. He redeemed everything that's happened to me, because the native religion that I was born into had caused a lot of the pain and issues. And I'm not just talking physically, but spiritually, because these religious events that are done and that I have been initiated into are so taboo and so forbidden to talk about because of the things that are done. The things that are done are to summon certain celestial beings. There's so many secret fraternities in these Native American tribes, and these celestial beings that they think they are space brothers or guides, spirit guides, are actual familiar spirits. They're actual demons, and they are attached to everybody's bloodline. So like with these sleep paralysis that I experienced, it was always like when I was getting demonically tortured. And when I say demonically tortured, it was literal, like sexual assaults. And I'm talking penetration. And it was so horrific with the things that they would do. But it was always so familiar. Like if I could just like see who this dark shadow, if they could just like unveil the face, that's how familiar it was. And that's when people were talking about familiar spirits and how they're attached to bloodlines and stuff, I finally understood, like, okay, well, this is obviously not like a spirit guide, because we're always trained to have like spirit guides or listen to our spirit guides and stuff like that, or call on our spirit guides, and using crystals and using sage and some other ashes from the fireplace, or looking into the fire. There's so many different types. New Age is starting to catch on to these practices, and it's not New Age. It's just retreaded and rebranded, and a lot of it's taken from Native American practices that's been done for centuries and centuries. And that's all just to open up all these spiritual doors and to basically counterfeit gifts. And when I say counterfeit gifts, because everybody is born with a certain gift. Everybody's born with a spiritual gift. You can have like a gift of healing. You can have a gift of prophecy. You can have a gift of speaking tongues and stuff like that. Or there's so many different gifts. But when I say counterfeit gifts, these are gifts that that the enemy hijacks a beautiful gift that God has given you, and the enemy hijacks it and he dilutes it and he muddies the waters and he uses it for his own gain. So the astral projection, it only takes you to the second heaven. And the more you use that ability, and the more, and another one is a remote viewing. Remote viewing and astral projection are different because astral projection is like you're actually traveling in the spirit and all your senses work. Because anytime I was astral projecting, it was always the smell of sulfur, and I could feel things, I could taste things, I could touch things. Whereas remote viewing, it was more like in the physical world, like, and in real time where I can actually see what other people are doing. And it could be like, I could be in a corner of a wall looking, and it's only like for a few seconds at a time. But I never knew like why I was able to do it or what the whole purpose and reason was for until I got delivered. So during these astral projections, I was able to not only fly, my flying was chaotic. It was never controlled. I was always chased by a dog man. And I would fly way too high, way too fast through power lines. And it felt like I was going to come crashing down. And right before I like hit the ground, I would wake up. But it was always like a dog man or something like vampires or some kind of cryptic that was always chasing me in these astral projections. And if it wasn't that, then it was me getting sexually assaulted by these demons. And they were so horrible because they would have like images of like a loved one next to me getting sexually assaulted at the same time that I was. So yeah, they definitely like to instill as much terror and fear and all the pain and sorrow and stuff like that. And the worst thing about it was that I felt everything in that other realm, and it was more intensified. There was so many times where I was like in a physical world and I would just walk down the street and I would always think like, is this real? Like, this can't be real. Can it be real? If I just step out into the street or if I just get hit by a car, I bet you it's not real. I mean, that's how real the spiritual world was to me. The spiritual world was way more real than this physical world a lot of the times. Getting to me getting initiated into the secret fraternity, I was 16 at the time. I had gotten pulled into a portal by an entity, and not only once, but twice. And when I told my parents about it, this thing was so upset that it ran and it bit. I say ran because it dropped my spirit back into my body and it went to my stepdad's side of the bed and it bit him on the leg and he woke up screaming and there was a set of human teeth marks on his leg. So, and this thing was jumping on the roof at the time, throwing rocks on the roof. So I had to get initiated because it was equivalent to a near-death experience. So not many females get initiated into these secret fraternities because these secret fraternities that are able to wear the Kachina mask, there's not, the women cannot wear the mask, but only the few that are initiated into these fraternities are able to go into the kiva and feed the guys and learn the prayers and stuff like that. But once I got initiated, I never went back. I left and I went to my stepdad's house and eventually left to go to the Navy because they said that after I got initiated that all my demonic torments would go away, but it only increased. It made things so much worse, and to the point where I was now going to the medicine man, different tribes around the state, actually 2 states. I was going to medicine man and I was trying to get healed. I was trying to get like my soul cleansed, my spirit cleansed and all that stuff. And it did work for a little bit, like maybe for a week or two. And then the sleep paralysis came back 100 times worse. So by the time I went to the Navy, honestly, I don't remember a lot of my boot camp. I remember bits and pieces. I have a lot of missing memory from my childhood and from boot camp. I've asked God to recover those missing memories. I've gotten bits and pieces back, which is a good thing because my soul was definitely shattered and trafficked. But I'm a work in progress. I'm definitely, if I recover them, great. But if not, it's not a big deal because it's like at this point I'm comfortable where I'm at and I'm happy that I'm finally free. So getting forward to my Navy career where I was now in reconnaissance squadrons. I've been to 12 deployments. So I retired at 15 years in the Navy. I joined in 96 and I retired in 2012. Been to Afghanistan, Iraq, El Salvador, all different types of Bulgaria, Italy, and stuff like that. And a lot of these places, I wasn't allowed to wear my uniform, but I had to wear civilian clothes just because of the type of work that we were doing out there. That's where I have a lot of the missing memory because it was like I would go to these places, and like I said, I was an aircraft mechanic, but that's really all I remember is, like, just being at work, any kind of, like, we were able to go out into town and stuff like that. I vaguely remember those moments, but yeah, a lot of it was black ops, places. It's so kinda strange talking about it because my family always asks me why I don't have pictures of myself in the military at these places, and I'm just like, "I don't know. I have all the awards, but I don't know." It's kinda silly, I guess. So I get to Afghanistan, and this is, like, with my husband now, and now I'm, like, in Northern Afghanistan, and he's in Southern Afghanistan, and by this time, I had learned about jinns and stuff like that, and which are kinda like the demons for the Middle East people and their stories, because there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens out there too in the spiritual world. I mean, that place is, like, really charged with a lot of stuff. But I was able to remote view from, northern Afghanistan down to Helmand Province, which is, like, 3,000 miles away. But I was able to remote view him, and I would tease him about what I saw, and he was kind of freaked out for a minute, but he was like, "I don't know how you're doing it or how you're seeing me," but so he knows it's possible, like, these things are possible, but like I said, he's not too well versed in the spiritual world or how that works, but it kind of freaked him out a little bit. On the way back home, that's when I started going through all my PTSD. I went to therapy for 8 years, and I went on antipsychotic medicine, antidepressants for, like, a year, and even then, it was like I was still getting a lot of night terrors, a lot of sleep paralysis and stuff, and still getting terrorized by the shadow man and whatever else was around. I started to see these specific demons. One of them specifically is a spider with a dead person's face, and I never knew why, and they were different. There's, like, some of them that look like big old huge softballs, like black fuzzy softball spiders, and they screech and they scream, and others have, like, this white demonic face with spiders, and so my husband and I had gone in a huge argument, and I was so anxious that night, and that's when I saw it was I say it's a dimension shift because it's, like, right before you're gonna go into sleep paralysis, it feels like an earthquake. So, like, the whole bed's moving and it's shaking, and then you hear, like, this white noise in your ears, or else you hear, like, a huge vibration, like, "Woo, woo." It's like it is and it just, like, kinda penetrates, and it's so loud, but that happened, and next thing you know, I'm like, I see, like, these legs, like, people are standing around my bed, and I feel this spider on this left side of my shoulder, and I'm, like, laying on my right side, and I'm, like, screaming, I'm yelling at these guys, "Get it off of me, get it off of me," and the closer it got, like, it was just looking down at me, and I was screaming at him, like, "Get it off of me," and then it started to wedge its head inside my left ear, and I'm sleeping on my right, and finally, it almost went inside my ear, but I grabbed its body, and I threw it across the room, and then that's when I woke up. In the morning when I woke up, my whole entire left ear, it was so red and it hurt, like, and but that whole night I was sleeping on my right side. That's what every time I tell people, it's like whatever happens in the physical eventually manifests, and whatever happens in the spiritual manifests in the physical world, because there was absolutely no reason for my left ear to be completely red and swollen, but I saw what was trying to wedge itself into my ear, and it was so disgusting. And there's always mansions during these astral dreams or these demonic dreams. There's always a mansion, and these mansions are always old and have cobwebs, or they're old and dark and musty. And they always have like this sleek obsidian looking tile on the floor, dark, cold with a fire, but the fire's not warming anything up. Yeah, so it's my dreams are very vivid, and I recorded a lot of them, and, sometimes I'll go back just to when I'm counseling somebody and they're talking about their nightmares, and they'll trigger, like, a memory, and it's all the same thing, honestly. It is all this demonic torments and dreams and stuff like that, so at least I know what prayers to give people and stuff to help break that, to help them find freedom. So this is year 8 that I'm in therapy. And during this time, we're living in a new state. I'm away from my tribe, and I'm still kind of like iffy about the whole thing about medicine men and stuff like that. Cause I'm like, at this time, I'm like so sick and tired of like religion and all these demonic dreams that just aren't stopping that. And I'm supposed to be better by now. Cause it was like I had no reason to have any kind of nightmares or night terrors or anything like that happening. But my neighbor, she would always come over to my house and she was always preaching the gospel. And she's such a sweet lady. And I didn't understand any of the scriptures that she was trying to tell me, but she was always like, if you just get into the Bible, and I kept asking her, I'm like, what is so special about the Bible? Finally, I was so upset and I was like, what is so special about the Bible? You keep saying that your God can heal me and your God can do this and all this stuff. I was like, where is this God? Why hasn't he, like, all these time that I try to see the medicine man and stuff like that? Because my thinking was that all gods lead to the one creator God, which is so not true. So not true. But I was ignorant. I had no idea. Never grew up in a church. So never picked up a Bible. I picked up every other religious scripture like the Quran and Buddhist and everything else, but never picked up a Bible. So finally I snapped at her and I was like, where is this God? If this God is real. And I said, why doesn't he save me? Why hasn't he helped me? And she just looked at me and she just said, God bless you. I still love you. And she left. And it wasn't long after that that I had the encounter. I had the encounter with Jesus. And I'm so sorry if I get emotional because I'm already getting emotional. It's so hard to talk about because it's like I'm almost 50, 49, and it's been so many decades of being tormented by demons. That's all I've seen my whole entire I've never seen I've never seen anything beautiful, no angels. I did have dreams of angels and demons fighting, but nothing positive. It was a war for sure that I saw a couple times of the heavens opening and there's angels and demons fighting in the air and I'm looking up and I would wake up. But like I said, it was just always torture. It was always demonic. It was always disgusting. The smell of sulfur and cold and not pretty. There's so many things that I've seen in the spirit that will make people cry. All the child sacrifices, mutilations, animal sacrifices, and nobody really needs to know that because it's like it really does happen. I've never seen it physically, but in the spirit, and the sounds that these people make when they're getting tortured is the worst part of it. But when went off on my neighbor, I had another sleep paralysis attack, and this time I was sleeping with my son because he was sick. It was the shadow man, go figure. And when he was crawling up the side of the bed, I could feel the bed move, but I was paralyzed, and I was like, "Oh, let's get this over with because I already know what's gonna happen." So I pretty much had given up until he finally got to like my chest area, and he everything changed because when he looked over to the right side where my son was sleeping, my fear turned into anger, and I grabbed its arms as hard as I could, and I didn't let go. And we were fighting for a while, and it was trying so hard to get to my son on the right side, and it was like scratching my across my chest, trying so hard to get to my son. And my son was sleeping; he had no idea what was going on, and I knew I was losing grip, and the whole time I'm like screaming, somebody help me, somebody help me. And I'm screaming to my husband because he's in the other room. He's in our bedroom, and I'm screaming for him to wake up, come help me. And right when I was about to lose my grip, I screamed out, Jesus, help me. And that's when a portal opened in my bedroom, well, my son's bedroom, I should say, and it was on the foot of the bed, and when he walked when he walked through, I didn't know who he was. All I saw was a man with short curly hair, a beard, and he had like a white tunic shirt. It wasn't even from this age kind of shirt, but his hair was wavy. Oh my god, he was so beautiful. And he was getting closer and closer, and the whole time I'm holding this thing down and I'm looking at this guy walking towards me, and I could only see like an outline, then I could see like a little bit of the face, and then I could see the eyes. And this demon just totally stopped fighting, and it was like we're both in shock staring at this guy walking towards us because I didn't have to hold it down anymore. It was cowering into like it was near me, like it was trying to like hide. And that's when I looked again, and it was like he was coming closer, and the closer he got, it was like his our eyes locked, and I saw his eyes, and they were like, and I saw behind him was like a yellow glow. Now I know that's heaven because I was like, it was so. I can't even explain to you like how beautiful it was behind him, and how beautiful he was. It was so so beautiful. The way his eyes changed color, and yeah, he said it was like looking into a storm, and it was getting lost in his eyes, but it was like so much power, the presence of power, the presence of love. And it was like a father's protection and a father's love, something I never had before in my life. But I knew it was my father. I knew it was Jesus. And he walked to the left side of my bed, and he picked up this demon, and I saw him like gently. He's such a gentleman. And he picked it up and he left. He turned around, and this thing was like screaming, and it was trying to get out of his hands, but he carried it off like a little baby, like so easy. And as soon as he crossed the threshold, that my wall closed up, that portal closed, and I woke up, and it was like a 3:20 in the morning. And when I finally woke up, I was like, I had been searching the internet. I had scoured the internet because I was like, what did I just experience? Because all these years of going to medicine men and being initiated into these Native American tribes, the secret fraternities, and practicing my religion to ward off these evil spirits, and all I had to do was call out to Jesus. That's all I had to do. And it was really not for me, it was to save my son. It was to save an innocent child from being tortured, because I don't wish that on anybody. Not even my worst enemy, not even the people that abuse me. I don't wish any of this on anyone. And now I see like how so many of my people are in the same boat. All my cousins I've talked to, they all have sleep paralysis. They all get demonically tortured. And I tell them, I say, all you gotta do is call out to Jesus and he'll save you too. But they don't believe in it. They still believe in our old traditional ways. And there's so many times where they say that Jesus is just the white man's religion, but the Jesus I saw was Middle Eastern, olive skin. Definitely wasn't white. And like I said, I had been looking for who I saw on the internet, and I could not find him at all. I could not. And all I see is like blonde hair, blue eyes, straight hair and stuff. None of it matched up until I went to my supervisor's house for Bible study, and I walked in her house, and I almost cried, but I had to keep I had to keep my composure because I hadn't told anybody about what happened. I hadn't told anybody what happened to me as far as seeing Jesus pull this demon off of me. And what I saw on her wall was this big old huge picture. And I said, "Who is that?" And she said, "Oh, that's the Lion of Judah. That's Jesus." And that picture of this little girl that painted Jesus when she was 8 years old, and that painting got lost, and that finally returned to her. But half of it, where you can see him, that's exactly who I saw. Oh, that's exactly who I saw. Oh my gosh, I couldn't stop staring at it, but I asked how she got that picture, and she said, "I've always liked that picture," because she said, "I think that," she said, she dreamt of Jesus, and she said that's how he showed her what he looked like. And that this happened let's see, 5 months after that first deliverance. So, glory to God. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for revealing to me what you really look like. Because I was, like I said, after that first deliverance, and I was looking around, this was in September, this happened, and I bought my first Bible in October. But in between September, middle of September and October, those 2 weeks, I was like going crazy because I was like, what did I just experience? What really happened? And I went to so many churches and I was like, "Tell me what this happened," and I kept like nobody understood. Nobody could explain to me that I had a deliverance, and it was more like I was getting pushed to just not say anything because it was more like, "We don't talk about the enemy. We don't glorify him, and I'm sorry you had that happen to you, but it was sounds like you just had a nightmare." And they suggested I just stop watching scary movies or reading scary books. So I kept searching. I stopped talking to people in my area and I started reaching out to different people across the country. And then that's when actually saw somebody on the Confessionals podcast, Nathan Reynolds, and it was his testimony that he was talking about. And I related to him so much because we're both military veterans. Not only was he initiated into the Hopi tribe and their dark magic and stuff, but that's exactly what I have been experiencing too. So I reached out to him and he sent me some prayers. And so I started speaking the prayers. And not only that, I reached out to another lady who specializes in sleep paralysis. And we had a Zoom call. And the first Zoom call, I think our call dropped like 8 times. And finally she goes, "Well, just keep saying those prayers and I'll check back with you in a couple weeks." I said, "Okay." So I was not at all well versed in the Bible. I didn't know what the books were. I didn't know how to read it. I didn't know if I should start from Genesis and work my way back to Revelation and stuff like that. So it just kind of sat in my house for a little bit, but Nathan Reynolds was the one that definitely helped walk me through uh learning learning the word and learning how to pray and stuff. And I told him, I was like, I need to research what these words mean. I need to research what Elohim means. I need to research what Proverbs mean. I need to know what these words mean that all these prayers that you're giving me because n- growing up in that Native American religion, spoken words carry a lot of weight and I know how curses work. I know how witchcraft works. And I told him, I said, I don't want to curse myself anymore because I don't know what I'm speaking when I'm calling out for Yahuwah or Yahweh or Elohim. So it took me a little bit, but I finally started saying prayers. And how I started doing it was when when I start praying and there's like a verse that's in the prayer, I'll highlight it, then I'll kind of bookmark it in the Bible and I'll read it and I'll kind of like think about it and what it means. And then that's when it started taking off because as soon as I started saying prayers like Psalms 91 and Psalms 23, paranormal stuff started happening at my house. Things were slamming around in my window at 2 or 3 in the morning. By then I was so I wasn't scared because by then I was exhausted and I was tired and I was just like ready to like kick these little things out that were in my house. Things in my kitchen would move around and I would get on the call with this lady that specializes in sleep paralysis. I'm like, "Hey, this is what's going on when I'm praying these prayers. Does this sound okay? Like, is this what's supposed to happen?" And she's like, "Oh, it's okay. They're just like little kids trying to scare you to stop praying. Just keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, you're doing something right." I'm like, "Okay." So the more that emboldened me even more. So I was like that. So I start like it was like putting all my effort into like these prayers and actually learning the word and what they mean and what the root word of the Hebrew word is and stuff like that. And that's when I started seeing these dark shadows starting to like leave. And when that happened, it wasn't just by saying Jesus either. It was like literally with all these prayers in the Bible that I was utilizing and just commanding and declaring and renouncing and learning how to forgive me, forgive for doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, so many people that I've hurt along the way in my life, I had to forgive myself. I had to reach out to people to ask for forgiveness because I not only was I was I hurt, but I was also hurting other people. And that saying is very true. It's like hurt people do hurt people. I was so angry with everybody that abused me from a child, and I just wanted to take it out on everybody. And at the same time, it's like the people that wanted to help me, I just pushed them away. And I was so good at compartmentalizing. I was so good at putting like a wall around myself and kind of pushing people away and walking away from relationships and stuff like that. And that's not but I would feel really bad about it, but I would just force myself to be like, "Oh, I don't care. I don't care. That's how it is. That's how it is." But yeah, so that and every day is like a it's not just like get all that stuff done and out of the way, but it's like an everyday progress. It's like every day is like I ask for forgiveness for even like for little things, for talking to my dog, like yelling at my dog or something, because it's like I really do want to remain pure, for I want to be without spot and wrinkle because I wish so many people would see heaven, because it's like when you see how beautiful it is, you want to purify yourself. You want to, because it's like I feel so dirty even now, and it's like I really want to just bring as many people as I can with me to heaven, because it was so beautiful. And that's not the first time I've seen it, and it's so warm there, and it's so amazing. If I could just, like, carry people with me and be like, "Have a little piece of heaven," they would understand. But anyway, the whole walk with the learning prayers and stuff, that's what kickstarted me into starting to research about like taking Bible classes. I took 5 Bible classes, all 8 weeks long. And so it was like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were my Bible classes, 8 weeks long. And I had tons of notes and stuff. And not only that, I was so hungry for the word, because it was like a lot of things that I had no idea that were taboo or that were forbidden that we were doing. I was like, holy cow, we were doing like blood sacrifices, and we had no clue that it was, I mean, even to this day, like for these religious ceremonies, we tie up a sheep and stuff. And when we cut the throat, because we use everything on a sheep during these cookings and stuff, like, we'll cut the neck and drain the blood, but before the sheep takes its last breath, we'll, like, untie, because 'cause we'll have the legs binded. We'll unbind it, and then as the leg's kicking, it takes its last breath, and we'll say a prayer, and that prayer is, like, to dedicate the sheep and its spirit to the spirit world for our ancestors to catch, so they can also enjoy eating the sheep, I guess. And it's a blood sacrifice. And I was like, "Holy cow." I didn't put 2 and 2 together until recently when I was reading Leviticus, and that was yeah, so renouncing that and asking for forgiveness for that, because it does say in the Bible, it's like, "My people perish for the lack of knowledge," and I just didn't know. And feeding spirits is another big one that we do. The idolatry, the wooden idols that we worship is another big one too, because there's so many different wooden idols that are set up in different sacred sites around the reservations, and just not my reservation, it's like all these other reservations. And there's so many things in the Bible that is like detestable to the Lord that we are currently doing. And once I renounce all of that, and I'm not saying that I'm renouncing my whole culture and stuff, because religion and culture are totally two different things. Because religion, the religious part of it, where everything's like a forbidden knowledge, because the only reason why it's a forbidden knowledge is because of these sacrifices, because of these rituals, because of these certain ceremonies, is because they're opening portals to summon in all these celestial beings. And they use it through song, they use it through vibration, frequency, and that is 100% new age right there. And not only that, but divination is also a part of it, using Mother Earth, using all the crystals, using all the sage. And so I've heard New Agers talk about like washing their crystals in the moonlight. Well, that's what Native Americans do. And a lot of it, I trace it back to the Egyptian deities, because there's Ra, the father son, and then there's the moon goddess, and then you have the third eye, which is Horus. And a lot of these Kachinas, the way that they were bred back in the day, is through incest. And doesn't that sound a lot like Osiris and Nephthys and Set and Horus? So it's the Grand Canyon has a lot of petroglyphs. So does a lot of mesas in the area, like Hopi, Zuni, Tiwa, Jemez, all these 19 tribes in the area, Chaco Canyon, Valley of the Gods in Utah. There's so many different petroglyphs that are inscribed on the canyon walls, and a lot of it is telling a story of what was there before, during the pre-flood and after the flood, and a lot of it has to deal with what's under the earth and these portals that are being opened, and that the veil is so thin. And I'm not saying that all these spirits are bad. There's also good spirits, but if we don't know or we don't have any kind of discernment, then it's like you're just basically opening a big old huge gateway and ushering everything in. Because everything that's Angali doesn't need to be practiced in the dark. It doesn't need to be forbidden. Anything that's ungodly and anything that's of the dark kingdom, those are the ones that are forbidden. Those are the ones that need to be held secret. Those are the ones that are taboo if you talk about it. And that's what I love about the Bible, is because there's no secrets. Growing up, having to hold everybody's secrets, seeing everybody like keep secrets. And that's what drove me crazy. It's like, why are there so many secrets around here? I can't talk about my religion because it's taboo to talk about it. I can't talk about what so-and-so is doing because we don't want to shame our family. So there's secrets everywhere. The Bible is 100% wide open for anybody to read. There's no secrets. There's no hidden knowledge. And the best thing about the Bible is that ever since that I have been delivered, I have not astral projected. I have not remote viewed. However, I have been taken to heavenly realms, and it's not scary. It's not terrifying. It's actually biblical, a lot of the stuff that I've seen, and it's beautiful. And God is such a gentleman about it, because he will not it's all about learning too. And he'll take me to different places and he say, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And it's just like, okay, I get to see. He takes out all the fear. He takes out the smells. He'll leave the sounds and stuff, but he's explaining what's going on with whatever situation that I'm in. And then I'll wake up. And since I wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning almost every night on the dot, especially like after these night visions, I pray for whatever I saw, or for whoever I saw that was in these night visions and stuff like that. So I learned that I'm an intercessory prayer warrior. And that's one way that God has revealed one of my strengths. The other strength is being able to minister to other people, anybody. I was working at a homeless shelter for a while, so that definitely helped sharpen my sword, so to speak, with spiritual warfare, because there's a lot of stuff going on in homeless shelters. Now, concerning deliverances, I have gone through 5 deliverances, and all of them have been different. The first one was with Jesus doing with my first deliverance. The second deliverance started, let's see, October, that's September, October, November, December, 5 months later. So my deliverance were like over the span of a year. So it didn't just happen like one and done. It was like, I had to gain strength. I had to gain like a strong foundation of the Bible and stuff like that, and trying to grow like a strong prayer life. And so the second deliverance, I decided to do a water fast. And this water fast, people were kind of like telling me, or the ones that had, by this time I already connected with a good deliverance ministry, and they were like kind of walking me through like what to expect and stuff like that during the water fast. And like, now you're gonna encounter a lot of crazy stuff, but just hang in there, just stay strong with it, with the Bible and prayer life and with the Word. And I'm like, okay, not knowing anything was gonna happen, and I'm working at a homeless shelter at this time. The second day of my water fast, I had this crazy night vision. And it was me and this angel in his like golden armor and stuff like that. But he had like a quiver, and he had a bow. And we were walking along a forest, and we came out into a clearing, and we saw like in this little, like a little hunter's, I won't call it like a little blind, I guess you can say. And up above, like he was crouched over, like he was hunched over. It was all I could see was like a silver, black, grayish kind of looking thing. And next to it was like a sheep that was kind of bound. It wasn't like dead because there was no blood. But next to it was like a goat. And it looked over at me and it put its finger to its lips and then it drew its sword. I mean, drew its like an arrow and locked it in, and then he drew, and then he released, and then it shot this demon, and then it fell on the ground. So he goes walking over, and I'm like walking underneath, and I look up and I see the eyeball of the goat, and it's looking down at me. And then I look next to it, and it's a sheep. And the next thing you know, I hear like this gnarly like screaming from this demon. It's like raw, and I turn around and I look, and they're fighting. Now the angel has a sword. This demon over there has. They're like they're fighting and I'm backing up and I'm trying to go like backwards into like back into the forest and stuff. And then I'm trying to be quiet and the demon like turns around and he looks at me and this angel like threw the sword towards me. It was like a golden sword. It wasn't like a straight, it was like wavy kind of. It was so gnarly looking. And I went to, he said, catch. And so I caught it and I thought it was going to be so heavy, but it was like really light. And I was like, wow, it's like super light. So next thing you know, he's this angel screaming, he's like, run! And I turn around and I start running. But then when I started running, I started gliding. Then the gliding started turning into like me actually flying. And I was like, at the time, I was like, oh God, here we go again. Here we go again. Cause I was expecting chaotic, like extreme up, extreme down. There's like no control whatsoever. But this time I could control the height. I can control like how fast I was turning. And it was like, gliding past these evergreen trees and these like branches, and these branches are like hitting the sides of my cheek. I could feel the wind in my face, and I'm like, oh my God, I can actually control. I have like tons of control. So I'm like going through all these trees, and I'm looking back, and this demon's like right behind me, and is carrying like this torch with this flaming fire. And it was getting closer and closer. And finally I was like, maybe I can hide under here. Maybe I can hide under here. So I'm like looking and trying to see where I can hide from this thing, but I kept flying and I go like up above the trees and then I come back down and I'm still going through the forest and stuff. And finally I wake up. And when I wake up, I'm like super nauseous. I have vertigo and I run to the bathroom. It's like 2 something in the morning and I throw up and it's nothing but this black goo. Cause when this angel, when it was fighting this demon, it took out that sword right before it threw it to me. It cut an X on this demon's chest and it was just like gushing. This black goo was coming out. And so when I woke up, when I threw up, it was just like this black goo was coming out of my mouth. And I was it was like it was kind of scary because I was like, I hadn't been drinking nothing but water at that point, second day of my water fast. And then I get called into work at the homeless shelter and I go there and there's this lady who was scaring everybody because she had just got released from the hospital. And she was like crying and she said, I need to talk to the pastor, but everybody was snowed in. So I was like the only one that me and a few other people were the only ones that were able to make it to the homeless shelter to work. So I'm over here sick, got vertigo. I'm sitting next to her and she's like, pray for me, pray for me. And I was like, okay, let's do Psalms 91. So I'm over there praying for her, but I'm also praying for me because I don't feel good at all. So I get to like the third verse and then she's like screaming. She's telling me to stop and she's telling me to shut up. And she runs outside and she's like, runs past the security guard and she runs to the outside where it's like sleet's coming down and she's like, no. I mean, it was like 2 different distinct voices coming out of her body. And then she comes back in and she's crying. She goes, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Jesus is in hell. I'm going to hell. I'm going to hell. I'm like, no, you're not. Trying to calm her down. So she's like, pray for me again. And I was like, you're going to have to sit here until I pray for you. So pray for her again. And that's it happened again, like 3 times it happened. Same verse came up and then she just started screaming and then she kept blaspheming about God and Jesus. And finally, I was like, we're just going to have to keep you here and just calm you down. So I put her in the back room and just had her sit there and calmed her down and talked to her as much as I could. But the security guard, the third time that she ran out, the security guard wanted to kick her out. And I asked him, I said, why? I'm like, just, it's too cold for her to go outside. She's going to freeze. And he goes, no, she needs to go to the hospital. And I said, why? He goes, when she ran past me, her eyes were completely black. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay. I said, don't kick her out. So I kept her as comfortable as I could for 8 hours until she was transferred over to like another place where she could go to sleep for the night. But I had to stay back and I prayed over the homeless shelter and I reset the frequency. I consecrated that place and I rededicated back to um I dedicated back to the Lord because I didn't want whatever attachments, and it wasn't just her. There was like a few other people that were dealing with issues at that time. I didn't want it lingering around and attaching to anybody else. So that was my experience at the homeless shelter, and then coming home, and my son now had a nightmare about me, and he said, "Mom, you had reptilian eyes, and you had a black cloak on, and you were chasing me around the house." And I was like, so we prayed against that and like canceled that dream and rebuked it. And during this time, I had been fighting against alcoholism. I didn't want to admit it for the longest time that I had an alcoholic problem, but I thought that, I was just gonna be a weekend drinker, and then sometimes I would hide 2 bottles from my husband, and my husband would come by me, like, he'll walk by me, he goes, "Are you drinking?" And I'm like, "No, what are you talking about?" And I would get these bottles, these empty bottles that I've been hiding around the house like Easter, and I would take them down to, like, the store's, garbage can, and I would throw them in there so he wouldn't find it in our trash can. That's how I mean, I was being I thought I was being sneaky, but he knew what was going on. But after my 3rd day of water fasting, and I broke that water fast finally, all my cravings for alcohol was gone, and I was looking back at that deliverance with that demon when it was gushing blood and I threw up that black stuff. There was this, like, nasty feeling, like, deep down in my gut of something getting ripped out, and my belly button hurt. It wasn't, like, on the outside, but it was, like, on the inside. It felt I can't explain it. It wasn't like a physical hurt, but it was that thing definitely got ripped out, and when I finally broke that fast, that feeling was starting to subside. The 3rd let's see, the 3rd deliverance, let's see, that happened February, March, April, May. Okay, so the 3rd deliverance happened in July, and that was back at the reservation. By this time, I had gone water baptized, and I was getting ready to go back to my homeland so I could, and I knew that I was gonna do, like, a bunch of land cleansing and all that stuff. I knew I had a lot of work to do ahead of me, so I had been praying, learning how to pray, getting a lot of pointers from freedom encounters and stuff like that, and ministering to other people at this time. And just like I said, I have been so hungry for the Bible and what and the Word and stuff like that. So that's all I have been doing. Like my off days, anytime that I could listen to the Bible, I would have my earbuds in. I'm playing worship music. I would like actually sit in my prayer closet for 3 hours and I would pray. I would just worship. And it wasn't like me asking for, we're gonna do this, or asking God for any kind of blessings or spiritual warfare tactics and stuff like that. A lot of the times it was just to sit down and like just worship him and for his goodness and stuff. And during those times where I didn't ask for anything, any kind of blessings, that I just wanted to sit at his feet, that's when I would feel like it felt like warm oil coming down my forehead. And it was during those times I would just, like, break down and cry because it was just, like, such a strong feeling of his presence. There was, tons of times where where I needed protection, I needed I needed his help because when I had begun talking about my experiences and renouncing my native religion, the medicine man started. I wouldn't accuse him of trying to curse, but definitely when he was praying over my picture, my whole family's pictures and stuff like that, during his ceremonies, there was a lot of wickedness that was happening at my house. There was a dead bird right outside my front door. I threw it away. I didn't know what that meant really. I just thought that the animals killed it and left it, but this bird was facing east. And then the next day it was a different bird, a different color, and it was facing this exact same position, exact spot, except this time blood actually hit the pavement. There was blood dripping out of its mouth, and there was no other cuts to it. It just looked like somebody placed a dead bird on the front or it just died. I don't know. It was the weirdest thing. And then the brakes on my new car stopped working. My son started talking back to me. My husband and I got in a huge argument about over nothing. And that's when I was like, I had to call back and I asked my brother and I was like, hey, anything that happened? He goes, yeah, the medicine man was here and he prayed over everybody. Now mom is sick and she's got like the flu. And he goes, I didn't go over there. So I was like, oh, okay. So that's when I had to pray and cleanse the land again because of the blood that was shed. I had to re-anoint um, and then after that, broke whatever spell was said or whatever curse was said. If it was a curse, I rededicated my house and my land back to the Lord. And my husband and I reconciled our argument, and we ended up laughing that night because he was like, "I don't know what happened. It was just so weird." Like, so, and then my son, who never talks back, he's like, "I don't know why I just got so upset." He goes, "I am so sorry." I was like, "It's okay." So I've been keeping these instances like recorded in my notebook. When they get older, then I can explain to them. My youngest definitely understands the spiritual warfare part of it because he's experienced me with reptilian eyes and his spirit getting pulled out of his body twice and him feeling that dimension shift, that vibration right before it happens. So his prayer life is pretty strong for a 9-year-old, which is amazing. So here I am on a reservation and I have like a team with me and cleansing the land, re-anointing and all that stuff. And I knew I picked a fight. I was so sick. I had vertigo. I wanted to I was so tired. I wanted to, I just felt horrible and I couldn't even see. I was like stumbling all over the place. And one of the guys, he looked at me and he could see in the spirit, but he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "I don't feel good." He goes, "You picked a fight, didn't you?" And I was like, I think I did. But he said, "Look into my eyes." So I looked into his eyes and he's like, did anybody ever say that you have reptilian eyes? And then I started crying. I was like, "Are you for real?" And he's like, "Yeah, you have reptilian." And he's like, "Right here, I see like a slit." And I was like, it was just like, as finally I told him, I was like, "My son just had this dream about me a couple months ago about like me as a reptilian chasing him around the house and stuff." I thought it was like he was having like a demonic dream, so we're praying against it. I had no idea that it was inside of me. And then so he's like, "That's okay, we can get rid of it. We can get rid of it." And during the trip from New York to New Mexico, those attacks, those vertigo feeling and that tight binding around my head, oh, it just felt like something was like squeezing the top of my head. It hurt so bad. It was just increasing until we got to New Mexico. And finally, that's when we went to this one can I wanted to go. I didn't want to do a deliverance right there at my parents' house because they had no idea what I was dealing with. So the team and I went out to the canyon and stuff. And the canyon was like 200 to 300 foot drop, just straight down. But this thing kept telling me, "I bet if you just walk out there, you're gonna fly. I bet if you just jump, you can glide down like how you do in your dreams and stuff. You're not gonna hurt. You're not gonna get hurt. You're just gonna glide down there." So it kept convincing me to like jump off the ledge, jump off the ledge. And finally I had to back up and it took everything I could. And I finally opened up my Bible and I was reading scripture and stuff until I had enough strength to like get up and walk away because I was so close to jumping off. And that wasn't like the first time that I've ever had like a suicidal attempt. I've had like a couple before in my lifetime, but thank God I've never gone through with it. So I told the guy, I was like, "There's something chirping in my ear telling me to jump off the cliff." And he's like, "Okay, let's get this done now." So he was a foot away from me and he said, "We're gonna go, I'm gonna lead you through a prayer, okay?" And I was like, "Okay." So I didn't think I thought I was just gonna repeat after him. And I was like, "Okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready. What's the craziest thing that's gonna happen?" He started leading me through a prayer. And as soon as he started, I have no idea what he said because it was like he was right here. And then his voice kind of like, it literally sounded like it was 20 feet away. And then I felt like I got shoved inside my body and this thing came out and it took over. And there's times where I remember where I was like breathing hard, like I was running a marathon, and then I was crying, and then I was nauseous, and then I would go back down. And at the same time that he's praying, there's so many thoughts were going in my head because I was trying so hard to like bite my tongue and not say anything because this thing was so pissed. It was like, "Shut the F up, shut the F up. You're such a liar, shut up. And it was just like so angry. And it scared me because I was like, that's not me. That's not me. And I couldn't even say anything because I was bound. So now it makes so much sense when you're praying and you tell the demons, I bind you in the name of Jesus. That's how I felt because I could not say anything. So finally, when I heard him say, I bind you in the name of Jesus, finally my spirit came up and I could finally start rebuking because this thing went from straight anger to like straight lust. And it was like, wrap your arms around him, make him stop. I bet that if you put your arms around him, you kiss him, he'll kiss you back. Nobody ever has to know. And, it was so crazy. It was so demonic. So finally, when he said, I bind you in the name of Jesus, and I was able to like walk say the rest of the prayer of rebuking and renouncing, and I had thrown up and I was crying and stuff, and that deliverance was pretty gnarly. But like I said, nothing hurt. It wasn't like that other deliverance where it felt like there was a nasty rip inside. It was just like all the tight binding was gone. I wasn't seeing demonic faces in the clouds anymore because that or anywhere else because everywhere I looked, I swear there was like a demonic face staring back at me. And I was like looking at the clouds and I would ask my kids, I'm like, do you see that? Do you see that? Do you see that? Do you see that face? And I mean, they probably thought I was crazy, but I was like, you could see like there's some pictures that I took and you could actually see like a demonic dragon face, like a reptilian face coming out from the clouds and stuff and just staring me down. And but once we got rid of that and I was delivered from that, all the clouds that were hanging low, they were finally like up high, like how they normally are in New Mexico. And yeah, so I was delivered from that. And on the way back, I don't know what's in some of these states. Some of these states are definitely have some stuff going on because I felt like that nasty vertigo back, and I had that tight binding again in a couple states. And I was like, oh God, I'm like, please don't tell me you have like another one. Don't tell me you have another critter on me. And I was like, this can't be possible because I have been water baptized, and we get to my husband, he's like, "We're making, like, a pit stop, and it's like a you'll like this place, and it's like a surprise. I know you've never been here before." And I was like, "Okay." So we get to this one state, and, in the middle of the night, and it's raining, and I was like, "Well, I can't see what's out here." He goes, "We're just gonna go to the KOA and then we'll go out in the morning and stuff." And I said, "Okay." So we park there and we get the kids settled in and stuff and we go to sleep. Well, here comes 2 o'clock in the morning again and we're in a rental RV and I didn't pray over the RV or anything like that. So it's free game, right? So in the spirit, I see these two Sasquatches, these brown Sasquatches coming in and we have our dog with me. But they came in, the male came in first, the female was right behind. And it was just like I was looking at them. They looked to the right, they looked at my sons sleeping in the loft, they looked down at the dog, they looked at me, we made eye contact, they looked at my husband sleeping next to me, and then they just like kind of backed out and then they left. But it was curious because I was like, I didn't feel any fear. I felt fear. I felt evil. I felt demonic for decades. This was completely neutral. I was like, that was strange. But I was like, in the morning when I woke up, I'm like, Heavenly Father, I dedicate this RV to you. I'm cleansing it. And I'm like, anointing the doors and the windows and stuff. And I'm like, because I don't need any of that extra stuff. I've seen too much already. And then so my husband's like, hey, we're gonna go eat at Paul Bunyan's. And I'm like, oh, that sounds good. So we get up, we get ready. And guess what? This whole entire city of the Dells in Wisconsin, the whole theme is Sasquatch. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I was like, I just saw two Sasquatch in the spirit and at the theme parks, Paul Bunyan, Sasquatch. I mean, everything was just the whole city is nothing but Sasquatch. So I asked a couple of the people that worked there, I was like, do you guys see Sasquatch around here? And they're like, I don't know. It's just the cryptic of the area, I guess. And I was like, yeah, well, it's definitely correct for sure. So we get back home. So that was pretty crazy. That was gnarly. That was a really good one. And then I get back home and then I think I'm all free because, major success on the reservation with getting delivered and stuff. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys, while I was there and I was praying over my parents' house and I was cleansing it and stuff like that, I was sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was asleep. It was hot. It was summertime. The windows were open and it's just me and the dogs. And we're sitting in my mom's living room. And then I'm like, I felt like my job wasn't done. Like I was missing, like, removing some kind of idol or removing some kind of barrier to completely dedicate it back to the Lord and stuff like that, to completely cleanse it. So I was sitting there and I was like, Lord, I feel like I'm missing something. Like I think there's something that I'm missing. So I was just praying out loud to him and I was like, can you please show me what else I need to remove to be able to finish cleansing this house? And then there was a huge gush of wind that came through the screen door and a stick that came flying out in the middle of the room. Me and the dogs kind of looked at it. We're like, all right. So I picked it up and it was a pretty little stick. It was a beige stick and it had like engravings, it had paintings, it had like little trinkets and jewels that were glued onto it, but it was like kind of like a cube stick. And I was like, wow, this is pretty. So I put it on the stove and I said, Psalms 91 and I went to sleep and I asked my mom the next morning, I said, hey, I said, I looked at her and I was like, what's this stick? And she goes, where did you get that? And I told her what happened. I said, well, I was praying to God and I was asking him what else I need to remove so I can be able to finish dedicating it back to him so I can finish cleansing the house and the land. And this wind came and it blew it off the windowsill. I'm like, what is this stick? And then she was kind of like shocked and she goes, the medicine man had prayed over that and he told us to put it on the east window or put it on the windowsill facing east because it's supposed to protect the whole entire house. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I was like, wow. So I finished cleansing and in the morning when I woke up, I went through a couple other rooms and I opened up the shower. I opened up the shower door and I thought that a rag was falling. So I went to go catch it. And I look and from the corner of my eye, it was like a black shadow that went right through my hand. And I was like, okay, so let's finish anointing these whatever's left in this side of the house and stuff. Cause it was like kind of two houses put together. So yeah, so that was pretty interesting. And then when I get home, sorry, and after I was done cleansing, right before we left, I got to baptize my mom and my brother. And that was emotional. It was so amazing because like I said, I had been water baptized, so had my kids. So my kids join in on baptizing my brother and my mom and stuff like that. And I got to minister to a few homeless people in the next town and stuff, and that was really sweet. That was really nice, I hope. So coming back home to where I live now, I started watching another podcaster, and he had this guest speaker on called Don Dickerson. And he had been doing deliverances in all these prisons and stuff like that, and he has this prayer and it's really short, but it's so I'm like over here watching it. I'm like, oh yeah, let me say this prayer real quick. Nothing's gonna happen. I'm just gonna say it real quick. And every time I say that, something happens. So I'm like over here saying this prayer in the middle of a prayer, I start manifesting. And when I say I start manifesting, I was like, oh my God, my stomach hurts. Oh my God, I'm gonna throw up. So like I go running to the bathroom and I'm like, what? I throw up. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I thought I got rid of all of you guys. And then I go back and I'm like saying it again. I had to say that prayer like 3 or 4 times just to make sure I got everything out. Cause I was like, that was wild. That was so wild. So since I have given my testimony to Lifted, I have been getting tons of people reaching out that are going through similar stuff and just being able to connect with other natives that are in a similar situation because there's some that really want to leave the dark arts and stuff like that, but because of like the amount of backlash that they get from other family members because they think that being a Christian is such a white man's religion and because of the hurt of our ancestors and what they've gone through, it's so nice to for all of us to get support from one another. A few of them have gone through similar deliverances as well. And, but like I said, we don't we don't glorify each other because all the honor and all the praise and all the glory goes to Jesus. It's just, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you like how amazing it is to see beautiful people from all the tribes come together and love Jesus and give all the honor and all the praise and all the glory to him. And we pray for an awakening in the tribes and the First Nations because, like I said, the First Nations are so connected to the spiritual world, and what a powerhouse for all the nations if they had just accepted Jesus into their hearts. How much of the poverty would leave? How much of the violence would leave? How much of the drugs and alcoholism and just stopping those generational curses? Stopping it with them right now. My gosh, like I said, as soon as I had accepted Jesus into my heart and into my life, and it has restored my relationships with my husband. We don't fight, we bicker, and we laugh about it later because God is so good because he makes it funny. Um, he makes it funny. And we go to bed laughing. We don't go to bed angry. My children are a prime example of relationships restored because like I said before Jesus, I was so miserable, I was so mean. They were like walking on eggshells around me, and then now I can be like the mom that they've always wanted. I'm there to like mentor them, I guide them and just love on them and stuff like that. And I'm not afraid to, because I was afraid of being that crappy mom, that crappy adult in their life. And so a lot of it was building up a wall, thinking that I'm protecting them, I'm protecting me from me hurting them, when it was the complete opposite, that they felt isolated, they couldn't have all of my love. So just the whole restoration of our family life has definitely, it's the love and the strength that we have for each other. I can't even tell you like how Jesus has done that for us and for everybody else. That the hardest thing for me to forgive was forgiving what my ancestors had been through, because of their hurt, because of all the boarding schools and their horrific experiences and stuff like that. I was still holding on to the hurt for them. I was still holding on to the anger for them. And it is a righteous anger, but like it should never have been directed towards people because they were being used by the enemy. And I see that now because it says in Ephesians 6 that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. And the enemy definitely used that for his advantage and is still using it to completely cover everybody's eyes. And I just pray that people do forgive whatever happened with their ancestors. It's not for them to hold on to that hurt and that anger.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your testimony with us today. I just had a couple of questions. So, how many times did you go through deliverance?
Five, 5 times,
Okay.
five, yeah, over the course of a year.
Okay. And so, do you feel it was just like layers of things needing
Mm.
to be delivered from? Yeah.
Oh, yes, layers and layers, like peeling an onion off. Because every time when the Lord had taken me to these night visions, and He's like, oh, here's the Pleiades that you guys are summoning into your tribe. So I had to renounce that, and that was another deliverance. Yeah.
And also, I had a question when you were talking about remote viewing and even also like with the astral projecting. So, was that something that like you were just able to do or did it get passed on to you? Did you go through some type of like tribal indoctrination to be able to like astral project and to remote view? I'm just curious because like for in my own personal experience, it was more like I believe my grandmother or my
Mm.
great grandmother was like passing it on subliminally. So I'm trying to figure out how you got your
Yeah, it's all generational. It's
okay.
all generational because my cousins that do it or are able to do it, like we talk about it. We're like, "How do you do it?" And they're like, "I don't know, it just happens." Like we don't listen to these binaural beats or frequency sounds and stuff like that, or we don't meditate. And so it's definitely generational.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's just something that's been passed down
Mhm.
throughout
Yeah,
your bloodline that's just now does everyone is it passed down to everyone or is it certain people?
certain people.
Yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
kind of think it is with all like, my family is like it wasn't it's just, like, one of those things where it's certain people, I think.
Yeah, my mom definitely doesn't have the ability. She's not a dreamer, she's not a lucid dreamer, she doesn't do any of the stuff that I do, so when I tell her, she's like, "What?"
Yeah, yeah, definitely understand that one. Okay, so basically, the last question I have is just what would be the message for anyone who is coming out of being on a living their life on a reservation and having to give up what they have what's been bred into them from, the
Mm.
beginning of their whole life, like, what advice do you have to anyone who's either going through this or maybe attempting to do this? What would be your advice to them?
My advice is to not don't drop everything that you've learned about our culture because it is beautiful. I would just say definitely renounce the religion, the forbidden religion, the one that needs to keep held secret for sure because that's where all that those spiritual doors are open and that's where our gifts are hijacked and stuff like that. But as far as like leaving, there are tons of pastors around the area, and so far what I've experienced is that the Navajo Nation are more open to deliverance and stuff like that, and they do believe in the gifts. I wouldn't focus too much on like, oh well, there's too many white people here and stuff like that because I got all my help from white people. But I wouldn't focus on skin color because it's like there are so many good pastors out there that understand what you're going through. So once you get to the path of learning how to renounce, forgive, because forgiveness holds back a lot of the deliverance part of it. Once you forgive everything in your life and you actually do let that stuff go, the deliverance part happens. I would definitely get in a non-denominational church, a Bible believing church. There you can contact me for because I've been making connections in both Arizona and New Mexico with the pastors and stuff like that. So they're already getting ready to receive like an influx of people that are trying to leave the dark arts and stuff like that. I understand that driving is a little hard and difficult and stuff, but there are free Zoom calls for any kind of discipleship and stuff like that if it's kind of difficult for you to leave. But yeah, the most because there is going to be a loss of identity because that's exactly what me and all these other First Nations people were going through was a loss of identity because that's what you're grown up with. That's what you're born into just believing and stuff like that. We're all God's children and he loves every single one of us. And you're going to start questioning even just like down to traditional dresses, like if you should put them on or jewelry and stuff like that. Don't throw any of that stuff away because that's what makes our culture beautiful. I'm just saying that do not worship these idols. Do not worship the false gods. All the honor and all the glory goes to God, to Jesus. Mother Earth, divination, the moon goddess, the father son, those are also false idols.
And last but not least, will you pray us out?
Yes, I will. There's actually like this awesome prayer that I was talking about with Don Dickerson. So if you would like to repeat with me, I can. This is an amazing little prayer. Father, I thank you for Jesus. He is my savior. I am so glad to be born again. I qualify for freedom and I receive it by faith today because you have forgiven me and I choose to forgive others. Everyone who has hurt me, lied to me, disappointed me, I choose to forgive them. I repent of anger, bitterness, hatred, rebellion, resentment, revenge, envy, jealousy, strife, lust, witchcraft, and idolatry. I confess all that and denounce the sins of my ancestors. I separate myself and cut myself off from all generational curses. I renounce all unholy oaths, vows, pledges, and ceremonies. I remove myself from those curses. I denounce and confess as sin all unholy soul ties, for Jesus is my Savior and my Lord. I choose to be free, and I will be free. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing prayer. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing your testimony. I truly know that this will definitely touch some hearts out there.
Thank you so much.